We acknowledge and pay our respects to the Kaurna people, the traditional custodians whose ancestral lands we live and work on. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of the Kaurna people to country, and we respect and value their past, present, and ongoing connection to country, and their cultural beliefs. We extend that recognition and respect to all Aboriginal and First Nations people. Welcome back to Amy and I'm Amy Matthews, and today Justina, Ashman and Harry Stewart join me, and we're about to dive into something really exciting because we have two special guests joining us today. Let me first introduce Audrey Bellezza, a two-time Emmy Award-nominated TV producer who for over 20 years has been writing, developing, and producing non-fiction television for a vast array of networks and streaming platforms. But the reason we're introducing her today is because she's one half of the writing duo behind the For the Love of Austen series, which consists so far of Emma of 83rd Street, Elizabeth of East Hampton, and they're about to release in 2025 Anne of Avenue A, which is based on Persuasion, my favourite, so I'm super excited about that. And Audrey's writing partner is Emily Harding, who's another incredible human being and a graduate from Emerson College with degrees in creative writing and film. She also has over 15 years in television development and production, and we're super excited to talk to them about their Austen, I don't want to say adaptations because they're more like inspo. It's like Austen-inspired novels. And we can't wait for you to meet them because they're just the most wonderful human beings, and the books are so much fun. So we'd love to welcome Audrey and Emily with us today, all the way from the US, where it's, I hear, very snowy in New Jersey. We're sitting here in like 43-degree heat, or that's 110 for our Northern Hemisphere friends. I'm longing for snow myself. Anyway, we've been really thrilled. We've been reading their books. I've got them here behind me. So we've been reading Emma of 83rd Street and Elizabeth of East Hampton. And we're super excited to hear there's another one coming out too. So hopefully we can talk about that a little bit. So in our first month on Amy and we're looking at Austen because it's Austen's 250th anniversary. So happy birthday, Jane. So our first question for you both as collaborative writers is, why Austen? Like, do you have a particular abiding love for Jane Austen, or was it just that you loved Pride and Prejudice movies, or because you started with Emma, so that's often Austenites' favorite book. So I'm wondering how you came to Jane Austen.
It was like it was middle of the pandemic, and I was newly in Texas. And Audrey and I met along with our group of friends and have been friends for years, working in TV, in nonfiction television, and we developed shows. We were at some of the strangest places together and have had crazy experiences, and it's lovely and weird and awful in some cases, but just you build a great bond. So, best friends for years. I moved to Texas. Pandemic happens. TV just stops getting made. Like, there's just nothing for us really to do. And we were just kind of both. I have a history in writing. I went to school for writing, and Audrey was writing on her own. And we were sharing stories that we were just, hiding in the bathroom away from our kids, just something to do. And Audrey doesn't drink, but I definitely was drinking wine that night. And I was like, wait, write something together. Let's do it, And the hubris that comes with wine. We're like, we should just do Austen.
Start at the top.
Like that's something to do. But we did it. I mean, I think we've always bonded over, and everyone does. I mean, the Barbie movie, Depression, Barbie, watching Pride and Prejudice, like who doesn't kind of escape into Jane Austen? So I think that was where we kind of came from. And then Emma, what was it, Emma? Was it just because it was, was it New York?
Why did we pick Emma first? I feel like that was just dumb luck. I feel like tackling Pride and Prejudice with Elizabeth of East Hampton, that I don't know if we would have been able to do that right away. I feel like it just worked out that we ended up, I think we had just watched when we had this me not drinking, Emily drinking conversation. There was like a text, at night when we had that, which we still have when we were doing that. I think I had just watched the Anya Taylor-Joy version, and I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, maybe we should do Emma." And Emily's like, "I just watched that last night too." Like it's we're just sort of we're in the same wavelength, and I think we thought, well, Emma in Manhattan would be so fun, and then it sort of just started going, and then I remember we were like mapping it all out. Like it was that night. We just sort of like, oh, it could be this, it could be this. And our TV producer brains were just going, going, going. So yeah, that I feel like that's how it's all
So that
started.
makes sense to me because the Emma movie had such
Mhm.
freshness to it. Like it felt so modern that you
It
could
did.
kind of imagine it. And so our next question was, is it a little bit daunting to put an Austen style book in front of such obsessive fans? Like anyone who loves Jane Austen reads everything. Is that a little bit daunting, or you don't even think about it, or TV background means that you can put up a wall between you and the audience, or
I feel
Well,
like there was that moment we were like, not, well, we wrote this and we never thought anyone was going to read it. Like I
never,
would copy through to
never.
Audrey and she'd read it and then she'd be like, oh my God, that's so cute. And then she sent it to
It's
me. So I think
adorable.
that complete naivete, like not
yeah.
thinking anyone would read it, helped quite a bit.
Mm-mm.
And
That's
I think
awesome
that,
because, a lot of writing advice is to write with the door closed, like not to think of the audience at all. And I think
We really didn't. Yeah.
yeah,
because
that was the
the
accidental.
books have a
I,
kind of fun, like they feel fun and they feel like playful. And yeah, I don't think you can force that.
no, and it was just us writing and
Thank
like,
you.
me giggling, being like, Audrey's gonna laugh at that. Like there's so many like weird inside joke things that are in
Yeah.
there that I don't know if anyone else would even pick up on. But
Oh,
I do remember
yep.
I had like a minor like panic attack when we were talking
Hmm.
about doing Pride and Prejudice, and then Netflix did
Hmm.
Persuasion, and there was such a kickback, and I was like, oh God, it's like we actually like like people, I care and Audrey cares, and we do this like stupid amount of research and we're talking about everything, but you can't get it wrong because an Austen fan, there's no like mid Austen fan. Like everybody knows those, but their favorite book is their favorite book because they know every
Yeah.
line, they know every plot story. Like it's just this, so we felt also this responsibility, which was, I don't know if we would have finished Emma if that had hit us
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
Did you find it harder then
Hmm.
with Elizabeth, knowing that like, oh my God, people really loved Emma? Like, this book it works. And then you have to go and write the next one and you're like, oh no, hang on a second. And you get that like panic in your brain where you're like, people are reading these books.
That I still don't think I've gotten. The fact that we're talking to you
I
about
know. I know. I was like, I don't know if we realized. I mean,
it.
like,
Yeah.
I feel like there was, yeah, with Emma, we just sort of wrote it and thought, this is for each other. This is going to be so much fun, something to do during the pandemic. And then when we finished it, we, I remember we gave it to I was like, I think that we both were like, is this really good? And then we gave it to my mom, and she used to be a
She's a
writer,
writer
or
as
she's
well. Yeah.
Oh,
she's a writer. She is a writer, and so she read it, and she's like, this is fantastic. You have to give it to this person, and then maybe this, so, and then we got an agent and the whole thing happened. It sort of snowballed. So, and then I think for Pride and Prejudice, I do remember like sitting down thinking, are we really doing this? This is the big one.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like,
Get it out of
you
the
know,
gate early, like just get it done.
let's just do, this is what we have to, we teased it, we hoped this would happen. So, and it's happening, but I don't know if we realized that Emma was going to do so well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we hoped it, we thought it was a very special book, but we didn't know it was going to do this well.
Do
So you
you have
still
a
got a little bit of
sorry.
naivete then with
Yeah, I think
with the
so.
writing.
We still do now. We're doing Persuasion right
We
now, and
still
I'm
do.
like,
I know.
what are we
Okay.
thinking? Who
Like,
are we?
The book trailer dropped
yep.
for that, and I sent it straight to the group, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's my favorite of all the Austens is Persuasion."
Oh God. Oh
So
God. Okay.
I'm like so
I
excited.
think you'll like it. I think
So
you'll like
excited. The
it.
cover looks great. It looks so good. Do you have a favorite Austen? Is there one of these that you're like, have you already adapted the one you love the most, or have you got one coming that you are excited about?
I feel like
You
you
go
have.
first, Em.
Yeah, I had like I feel like they go through your
I know.
ages. I feel like
Mhm.
Yeah.
I loved Emma because I was probably Cher Horowitz's age for Clueless back in the 90s, and that was like Emma, that was me. And then in my 20s, I was like, oh, I am so like Elizabeth Bennet. Like, everybody is. Everyone thinks they are. And now is like I'm a bit older and was married. I'm like the Anne Elliot from
Yeah.
Persuasion. She is the pinnacle. Also because she is such an avatar for Jane herself, and there's a little bit of a fan fiction element to it of like what could have been,
Mm,
um And I kind of love that. And it's a very mature book. And so I love that. And I don't know if I'm just saying, I have a new appreciation for it after the past 6 months of kind of digging in. So that's probably my favorite, but I've gone through the ringer. And Lady
Yeah.
Susan. I love
Oh,
Lady Susan.
You do love
yes.
Lady Susan.
I
Yes, I'm
love
with you on
Lady
that.
Susan.
You too.
All right, well, if we dig in, I'm going to hand over to Harry to dig into the
Yeah.
books a bit
So I
more.
wanted to ask a little bit about how you guys approached like adapting these characters and pulling them forward, obviously in time a fair bit. So there's the funny one, which I was only talking about just before we went there. Obviously, we have our heroes and our heroines, which are integral to the plot. But what the one that stuck with me with the most was from Elizabeth in East Hampton, Mrs. Bennet and her multi-level marketing. I was like, this,
Great. So great.
I sent straight into the group chat because I read Emma first and then I read Elizabeth. And we'd done a little pre-meeting beforehand, and Justina and Amy had both gone, Harry, you have to read Elizabeth. Like, you have to read Elizabeth next, like straight, just run straight into it. So I did that. And that was the first thing that I get confronted with. I was like, Lux leggings, Mrs.
Yeah.
Bennet. And I remember running down to talk to my mum, who's a huge Jane Austen fan. And I was telling her what all the new characters are doing. And then she goes, Mrs. Bennet, multi-level marketing. I feel like that fits. And she's like, I wonder why. I said, well, I'm interviewing them next week, so I've got to ask. I was like, I'll be talking. But multi-level marketing with Mrs. Bennet feels so funny. So how did you guys go about doing the adapting these characters and finding those little fun modern quirks that you could put into each of them?
Well, I'll address the multi-level marketing after, but I feel like that was one of the most fun things to do. And I just went to my son's class, and they're doing adaptations of fairy tales. And the teacher was like, "Can you?" He's in third grade. Would you come in and talk about how you adapt, these characters for Jane Austen? It turns out she's a big Jane Austen fan, and I found like a slideshow showing all the old Jane, all Pride and Prejudice, characters from different books. So I showed that slideshow, and I brought my book, and I told them how we adapted, and it was so much fun to remember. And so I just did this, and it was
Where's the
the
slideshow, Audrey?
character.
Where's the slideshow?
Where's the slideshow? But I will tell you, like, this teacher was in hysterics because she hasn't read the book yet, and these kids are like looking at me, and I'm like, this is an adult novel. She's like, I don't care, I don't care. Just tell everybody what is Lydia? What is everybody? But for Emily and I, and for the class, like, it was so much fun to do that. To think, like, what would Mary be now? Okay, well, Mary, she was always just they always made fun of her, and she was bookish, and like, what is she doing? And yes, of course, she's like an environmentalist. Of course, she's doing this, and she cares about this, and what's Jane? Oh, Jane's a school teacher. That works. Like, that kind of goes. So I feel like each character, and Lizzie, like, she's like this strong person. Yes, she's going to be really into music, and she's going to be this surfer, and she's going to be, like, the characters. And when Emily and I do these characters, like, we really get into them. We create these boards, these backstories. Like, we approach it the way we would if it was a TV show, if it was a movie, if it was a series. Like, we really, like, kind of create these characters where they could live beyond. So each person, we really got into. But multi-level marketing, that was Emily, so she could talk about that. I feel like I was like, what is that? Like, I don't even have that really. I don't know that in the East Coast. Like, that's not such an East Coast thing.
Hey, hon, how are
Maybe
you?
it is. I don't know it though, but I don't know it as well. But when she was telling, I was like, what is this? And then as it kind of evolved, I'm like, this is hysterical. Yes, of course this is Bennett. Yes. She's a multi-level marketing. Now that I understand what this is, like, yes, that makes sense. So, and then it was like, Lux leggings. What is it? How are we making it?
My
so
favorite
anyway,
with the
Emily, you can talk
pockets,
to them.
with the detachable
Yes.
pockets.
That was
Velcro
all
pockets.
Emily. Yes.
Well, I mean, I think that the
Right.
key, the key to so much of it is like and I realized it with Emma, because Emma has a line where she's like, I don't ever want to get married.
Yeah.
I don't want to get married, in the original book. And you look at Miss Bennet on the other end, and it's like the one thing that we always had to do is like, what was their actual motivation in 1795 to 1810? And marriage wasn't for women a love prospect. It's an economical, that was a choice that they had to do, that was financial success. Mrs. Bennet isn't obsessed with her children finding true love. Like that's not her motivation. Her motivation is 20,000 a year. Like it's the money. It's the like what is that the bank account. And so I think we decide, Emma, even in, in Pride and Prejudice or in Elizabeth, doesn't want to get married because for her, she's like, I don't need to. I already have my own money. Why? That's so what crazy. Why would I want to get married? So for Mrs. Bennet, and it's financial security. Like that's what she's looking for. She's not very intelligent. So her idea of that is, well, I will just make my fortune in a mid-level marketing scheme. But that is what she's obsessed with. It is money. And that's what she was obsessed with in Pride and Prejudice. So that was for most of our, whether it was a character or a plot device, it was like, what was that character? What would that look like now? Like she wasn't Miss Pulowski from Emma is she is a widow in the book. In the original book, Miss Bates never gets married, and her ruin is that she never got married. She's this poor, destitute woman because she never found a husband for that economic safety net. So Miss Pulowski, we're like, well, she did get married. And that's what ruined her. Her husband left her bankrupt. Like that was like something, it's not in today's society, that's not the happy ending. Like there's a lot of ways that can go wrong. So it was just kind of fun playing with those devices and being like, what if we just turned it on its head and made it something ridiculous? And then when you start that, it just snowballs. We've got Velcro pockets, we've got light up LED cheese and
I love that she made Jane wear the leggings to
She's
the
so
bar.
sweet.
And Jane
And she
does
doesn't
it.
say no.
I also love when Emma goes to Miss Pulowski's house and she goes like, "Oh, there's your dog. I remember that." And he's like, "No, that died a long time ago. This is a new dog." And she's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, sorry." It's so like the
no.
modern retelling of the characters is so funny because of how the protagonists interact with them. I think it's genius. So did you approach the same thing with like your Darcys and your Charlies and stuff like that? And when you had Will, because I loved the teaser at the end of Emma. Because I read that one first, and then these guys started with Elizabeth of East Hampton, and I was like, "Oh my God, Will Darcy is in the second book because he's teased at the end of the first." Like, it's so good. But did you approach it with the same way? Because you've obviously got them. I noticed both of them are they're kind of like eco-friendly. Both of both of the heroes in it, they both do
Do that.
they've got a lot of money, but they
that was
do
the other thing.
in safe
We had to make
spaces.
them likable.
Yeah, and I
How do
was
you
like,
make
Yeah.
a person with a lot of money likable? And it's like, at least they're trying to make something good in the world. So I think that was kind of what we decided. We're like, at least they're doing something good with it. That makes them a little bit more.
so true. And they both really love the Stark architecture as well, which I notice is really funny. Like in the first book, he just, it's glass everywhere. And then you've got Marv's Lament again
Yeah.
in Elizabeth of East Hampton.
Although
And I was
Will's
like,
not a big fan of Marv's Lament.
no. But this really stark architecture is really funny as well. And I was wondering, did you connect them to our heroes to make them a little bit more like super wealthy? Or
I think, well, the Stark architecture in the Hamptons, I think that's very much like the nouveau riche go that way because it shows off the money a bit. So that was more of the Charlie thing. But I think there were little elements that we had to take into effect. I think one of my things with Will that I love is that, that he, in the original book, Pride and Prejudice, the Charlie and Jane are the ideal, at that time, the ideal romantic couple. Like, he's fawning over her and they're almost like the archetypes that they were at the time. And Jane Austen's like, and then there's this other couple who's not, they are like the anti-heroes at the time. Like Darcy was in no way, shape, or form the ideal love, match for anyone back then. They would have looked at him. And so I think, but now he is, like you say, Mr. Darcy, and everyone's like, oh, Mr. Darcy. So we were like, well, how do you do that? Well, you make him blonde because no one likes a blonde character in a
That
romance
is true.
novel.
I hadn't realized. Yeah, because I did notice all the blonde descriptions and think that's interesting. You don't like most readers are turned off by blonde. I hadn't thought about that, but you're totally right.
Did you
We
get
got
any
so many
pushback?
reviews like, I hate him, he's blonde. And I was like, yes,
Did you get any pushback for having a blonde Darcy?
we got
a lot of yes.
it was intentional.
Yes, we did on purpose. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I love it. I might throw it over now to Justina.
Yeah, so well, on that track of adapting these iconic books, like how did you go about adapting iconic plot moments. And especially because I felt reading them that you can see the essence of the original Austen, but they're also just so much their own books. They feel so much like you're just reading a rom-com that might not have any element of adaptation in it. I mean that in a positive way, in that like you're not constantly thinking back to the originals. You're just
and if
enjoying
you'd
the
read
moment
it,
and the
if
stories.
you haven't read Pride and Prejudice, the book stands on its own. Like if you've never ever seen a Pride and Prejudice adaptation, you'd still enjoy the book.
Yeah, and I think part of that is that these very iconic moments that as an Austen reader you'll recognize, but they all have this fresh take on them. They have this like energy to them, I think. And how did you go about, approaching those moments? Like the one I think about that hit me the most in Elizabeth was Lydia's role in the book is different to how what plot services she does in the Austen book. So yeah.
Was hard. That was hard because I think you have to again go back and how much allowance did we have? Because it was like, we were thinking of the Lydia thing, and I think even we got the proofs back. I'm like, what if everyone gets really mad at us that we made it, that we did this twist? But again, I think it went back to them just Lydia was doing what she was told that was important back then, and she chased that. And I think
she's a tricky character, don't you think, too? Because when you reread the original, she's only 15, and so we would read her storyline totally differently now. So
totally.
So when you adapt her, you've made her an adult when in your book.
I think it was the idea that she was a victim of of bad parenting and bad choices and a predatory man. So I think there was, of all those three sisters, I think there was also this whole idea of like, what if we gave them autonomy? What if we just gave them like they made these choices and they were allowed, to just, and then it kind of goes wild when you're like, you not put these girls, any of the characters, any of the female characters in society today, where they now have the right to make their own choices. It's so much fun. Like Audrey was saying, like so much fun to think of the trouble they can get into.
Fun.
Yeah, and Lydia seems particularly adapted to the 21st century. She seems like she'd fit very well with social media.
I know, right? That worked out.
I love Lydia, and I did like that she got a bit of a kind of go of it in this book.
I like
Justice for Mary.
Justice for Mary. And I feel like having them just being able to write sisters like that and having them all come together and having that kind of bond. And I feel like that really worked really well with that book. Like that there was one thing we wanted to make sure that there's no like female enemies, like everybody all the women characters were, motivated by their decisions, and there wasn't any enemies really there. So I feel like that really worked out well when we were plotting that out together.
Reading the sisters' dynamic in the book is honestly like, I haven't read such great dialogue between them all and such great characterization since like something like Little Women. Like they talk over the top. They talk over the top of each other. There's this like really intense family bond where they're always butting heads over things. And then at the end of it, you've got Jane and Lizzie sitting on the roof, like up there in a room. And it was just that first scene when they come into the bakery and you meet every single one of them that come in is just, it's brilliant. Like, it's absolutely brilliant. It's the best way. I was like, this is the Bennet family. Like, this is exactly what the Bennet family is like. And it was so perfect. And it's the same with the three dull things moment from Emma, talking about plot moments, how you brought that, like, what was your kind of process in bringing that moment? Because that's such a pivotal moment in Emma.
Which moment are you talking about? I'm totally
which moment? Yeah, I know. I'm like, which moment are you talking about?
Emma of 83rd.
I feel like you know these. Yeah, which part? And I'm like,
highlighted them all.
She makes the joke about the open bar to Mrs. Pulowski at her birthday.
The picnic.
Right, the birthday party. Yeah, the picnic birthday party.
And I was like, right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Harry. We were like, that was like a lifetime ago. I'm like,
but I was like, I love that he knows this.
We love the books. We're not lying when we say we love your books. We know them so well.
Oh my gosh, this is
but
so
it was like,
wonderful.
It was the three dull things moment from Emma, and I recognized at the moment that happened. I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot that
The
this is
retail thing.
because I'm so interested in this book that's going on. And I was like, oh my God, they've perfectly brought that into the modern setting. That was
Yeah,
amazing. Making her love
you
booze,
know,
like love the free booze. I was like, oh,
Can
you
relate,
know,
Harry.
can relate, yeah.
I well, I do feel like there's some very important lines. There are very important moments like that we all remember. We all know when Darcy, or this is Elizabeth in the beginning. Like how, so I do think Emily and I, when we sit down, we're like, well, how are we going to make that happen? We know that that has to happen, but how would they do it today? Like, oh, well, maybe they would do it on a text but how could he see the phone? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of like, so how are we going to figure out that moment? Because it is sort of like the story that we want to keep is this, we want to keep it sort of within the lines of Austen. So, that is something that we would go through back and
Yeah.
forth, or we would like, or I don't know, one time, like, remember, I feel like Emily, like you were like, we have to write backwards to get to this line, like there was something that was
Yeah.
important. It's like, we have to get this line in. Like the book is like, that is, everybody knows this line. We can't not have it included. And sometimes there was lines where like, it doesn't work. We can't, that's now
Yeah.
today, that well-known line that everybody loves, we can't put it in. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to jump
So yeah,
ahead to
there's
one of our
a lot
later
of that.
questions because you're making me think of it, which is just like obviously Jane Austen kind of pioneered the marriage plot as the foundation of what became romance. But when you remove marriage as a fundamental economic kind of goal, that when you say you've got to kind of stay in the lines, that removes two big lines, right? Like there's a big plot point that we're removing. So that really is interesting, that thought of how you get to certain moments once you've removed the marriage plot. Because
Mhm.
marriage
Mm-hmm.
then becomes about love and about, so how do we envision a happy ending without the marriage plot for your characters? You're talking about them having autonomy. So then will Darcy mean something different to your Elizabeth than Darcy meant to Austen's Elizabeth? I was wondering how
Mhm.
you thought about that when you hit those moments like you did, and you're like, I've got to do this line, but it doesn't really, I can't quite make it work in the 21st century.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was it. That was like such a crux that when you read Austen, you realize like them falling in love was a byproduct of an expectation of the time. Like if you loved your husband, you're like, whoa, that's
Lucky.
great. You really lucked out, right? Like that's,
Yeah, that's true.
and you're like, great, okay, thanks. Like there
Come
was
over
nothing
here. Yeah.
to do. There was nothing for women to do. So marriage was the career. Marriage was the career. So I think for us, it was, yes, you want to fall in love. Everyone wants to fall in love and they want to be seen and have someone appreciate them as for who they are. So that was our main goal for our guys. Um, and those guys change who they are. They reimagine themselves and they have growth to be good enough for these women. Knightley did it. Darcy does it. Freddie's going to be doing it. Hopefully, let's see how that goes. But I think that's our
Yep.
goal
We're
working
working on
towards.
it.
So for the women, like, great, these men are doing this, but their growth isn't now to get into marriage. Their growth, our growth always was the goal, was success. So if marriage was the only career path back then, I think the careers of these women now becomes kind of the crux. So Emma's, what am I doing with my future? And Elizabeth
Mhm.
was, I know what I want to do. I'm just being back a bit by circumstances. So that they kind of then are become they're running in parallel, is that I am falling in love with someone, but also my economic future is not tied to this person, something else, but it is still something that I'm that's driving my choices, if that made sense. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
It totally did. Yes, that was
yeah.
interesting.
Very wise.
Well said.
Justin, do you want to ask about the setting? I know you were really curious about East Hampton.
Yes, I found it a really interesting way of encapsulating that feel of this sort of smaller country, not country, but like in Pride and Prejudice, it's like this smaller community where everyone seems to know each other, and you have the adaptation of that into East Hampton was really interesting to me, especially because there is this sense of separation between these really wealthy outsiders coming in. Um, and what was the thought process around setting it in East Hampton specifically? Like, do you have personal connections there, or did you just think of it and think, oh wow, that would be perfect for this?
Well, Audrey's parents met out there. Like that was like
Yeah.
Oh,
So
it's like a
yeah, that's
Nancy
my
Myers
yeah.
film. That's what I think of with Hampton. Is
No,
the Hamptons and
I
Nancy
it
Myers.
is like that. It is like that. Yeah, my parents met there in the 70s. And so I grew up going there and, on the weekends but I stayed at like the motels in Montauk, like by Darcy, by his house. Like, so I was that are still there. So I would stay at those little, they're all now $500, $1,000 a night, but like, they're still, so I was, that's that old motel. So I grew up going there. But then, stopped. I mean, once, went to college, like I stopped going there. It's expensive. But we would, once in a while you can still go out there. But I think when Emily and I were first talking about this, we thought, I think we found some articles, like we were looking in magazines and articles, and it just sort of made sense. Oh yes, a small community, that has a beach feel to it, that locals can come to. I mean, it sort of, it checked a lot of boxes for us. And then we thought, well, let's take a trip out there on the weekend in the summer. Like, wouldn't that be nice? So we like booked a hotel room, and we're like, we're doing research. So
Yeah,
we went
love
out, and
research.
we had to do some research. And my best friend, his best friend lives out there, and he has a house on that, fancy block. So I know, like, Bon Jovi is his neighbor, and somebody else, Martha Stewart's his neighbor on the other side. So he sort of showed us around, and we were like, oh, this is exactly what we needed to. So we really researched the area, and we got an inside look at how everyone lives, and we found a bakery, and we really kind of lived that life for a little while. So I feel
for
like
48 hours.
that's yeah, for 48 hours. It was a wonderful 48 hours. So that's kind of how it started. But I know but I feel like I'm missing something, Emily, too. But that was the beginning of
Yeah,
it.
no. Well, it's really hard because we wrote Emma because we both missed the city, and we were just like, let's relive our
That.
craziest, most messed up
Hmm.
dating lives and write a book about it, right? So that was like what we
Hmm.
did. But Manhattan specifically, is a very interesting place because doesn't matter how much money you have, you could be, filthy, ridiculously rich, and you ride the subway with the same people. Like it is this
Mm.
like, mesh of like everybody's social status. You're kind of living very close together. So it's ideal for Austen because that's very much the world she was living in, where, the haves and have-nots were interacting every day. So to take a story out of Manhattan, it's like, where does that happen? Where does that exist? And you're like,
Mm.
and it is the Hamptons. It's you have people
Mm.
who live there all year round, and it's just like, up here, it's that whole East Coast, small houses and a farm, it used to be an old fishing community. It felt a lot like, the Cape in Massachusetts outside Boston to me. It was just like, oh yeah, everyone's here. And then you have these mansions that these rich people come to on the weekends that supports the local economy, but also there's a little bit of weird, like, is there resentment? Is
Yeah.
there not? And so it that created that interesting class drama that worked
Yes.
into. So
And
it
it feels
was,
like that's more heightened now too. Like it feels like with the housing crisis globally that you read about places like the Hamptons where people who've lived there for a long time are priced out of actually living there anymore. So it becomes like a transient thing because it felt to me like it gave it a bit of extra edge for me. The idea of all the girls having to live at home, for example, which is very common for
we had to
millennials and
solve for
Gen
that. We
Z.
had to
Yeah.
have the girls live at home. We're like,
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
do
we
we put?
had to. How do we
Yeah.
do this?
Well,
Yeah.
it was realist. It was great.
Was there any celebrity houses you saw when you were in the Hamptons that you thought Marv's Lament? That's it. That's going to be the one. It's
No.
bloody hideous.
Oh wait, we
No,
did.
I don't think
We
there was a
did.
house.
It
There's
wasn't.
Georgica
Yes, we did.
Beach is the place, and we walked down, and
We did.
our host Peter was like, "Oh, and there's these beautiful houses." And he's like, and that one a few years ago, a storm really like took this whole house and like blew it out to sea. It was like ruins. So, like they built this house, and I was like, "Oh, it's nice." It was awful. It was so bad.
You're scribbling in your notepads. You're like, we're going to make fun of this
I
house.
know, and I'm sure the person who lives there, they love that house, and it was a very loved house. It was not my style, but I think that's where that kind of got. We were like,
Yes. And
was
we don't know who owned it. We have it with no celebrity. No idea, but it was huge. Yeah. They're
Was the
all huge.
Bennett's
You're like, oh, it's still
Bakers?
going.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. You're like, whoa.
No, that's it. Yes.
Was the Bennett's Bakers something that came from that visit, or we already thinking of them having like a small business in the town?
I remember this. We thought of the bakery because at one point before we even thought Hamptons, we were like, they should own, it should be a family business. Well, maybe a restaurant. Maybe we should do something with connected to Ben from Emma. We were throwing, and then we were like, wait a second. If you're in a restaurant, like I'm it's hard to get off work, like I remember thinking that, like,
Yeah.
if you work at a restaurant, you
be
can't,
away at
how are we
night.
supposed to do nighttime things, and we were like, oh, but a bakery might be better. So then we thought bakery. I mean, there was times where we were like, well, maybe we'll have this set down the Jersey Shore, blah, 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 because that's where I go now. So I'm like, Jersey Shore. And then we're like, no, Hampton. So, and then bakery, it just kind of all like as the time went on, it sort of figured itself out organically.
And maybe the most important question of all, have you baked the sour cherry muffins? And if so, can we have the recipe?
Mary has baked so many sour cherry muffins.
Oh, if you give us the recipe, we will bake it and film us.
I even tell you, not only have I done it a million times, Emily has tested it. I've done it like 17 times because we wanted it to, at one point we were like, let's make a cookbook. So, I mean, we couldn't do it all, but we did like 4 recipes, but those were not tested or terrible. But the sour cherry ones, like we did those, we have the recipe, we have the write-up, we have the pictures, like it could be a post somewhere. Like, so.
Although, do you remember where that came from? We were at a farmer's market that 48 hours.
Oh, that's a story. Yeah.
And it was like, we were at this farmer's market. And the one thing that we thought it was when you went to Hamptons is like, there are the rich people and here are like the middle class working people. And then we went to this farmer's market and, Peter's showing around. He's like, oh, and this is, he was just introducing and everybody. And I couldn't tell. I'm like, are you a local? Are you a multi-billionaire? I don't know. Everyone was in like,
don't know,
hanging out. And then we went over on a stand and this, this family had muffins. And so we're like, oh, great, we'll have a muffin. Best muffin. I still dream about those muffins. And
there was gluten-free ones too.
I know, so good. And as we're talking, and then he's getting to leave, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, I forget his name." It's like Bob. He's head of cardiology in the city, and I was like,
Mount Sinai or something. Yeah,
I thought he was like struggling to making muffins. I was like, what is this crazy?
He's just really good at muffins.
It was real. It was real muffins. He had pickle, cotton candy. I mean, like there was a family there. It was like a whole. We were like, this is the Bennetts.
I feel like we need a research trip to the East Hamptons, guys.
Yeah, I think we really do.
We do.
And then he just goes back into the city and does.
Yes, that's what we said.
Well, I guess
we're like eating our muffins in the car. Like, how could this be?
I guess both require precision, right? Baking and heart surgery.
Yes, they are probably very similar.
So funny.
It's precise.
Don't get that cherry muffin wrong, though.
Yes, but that is where we got it. That's the idea. We got it from there, and then
if we get a recipe,
crazy.
we will bake them on the show.
Yeah, if you send it to
us.
We have at least one co-host who can bake.
Yes, she's making us melting moments.
None of them are here.
Yeah.
No, we do the eating and testing, not the.
I was going to say testing is very important. I will stand by that.
So I thought I'm going to skip your question. You can come back after me. I have to get in and ask this because I wanted to ask it before and I suppressed it. I just lost it when I realized Lizzie loves romantasy. I just loved that. The way she's obsessed and the way you've like made, the bad love interest look like a romantasy hero. So when you were going through and deciding how you modernize characters and stuff, we were interested in the way both Elizabeth and Emma love romance. What made you think that Lizzie would love romantasy and Emma would love period romances? Like, how did you assign those to those characters?
I know whether, because Audrey loves romantasy. So we were like,
awesome. Yes, I love it. Yeah.
And I think that there was something about, in the original book, Elizabeth is kind of called out for loving reading. They're like, she likes to, and I think, and she's like, why do you care? And so what is something that people like tend to turn their nose up at romantasy. And so she'd be like, I don't care. It's great.
Yeah, awesome. I liked also that you made Jane a Doctor Who fan. That was amazing.
And
Yes,
Rings
that
of
was
Power as well. She's like, I don't want to go to the bar tonight. The new Rings of Power season is out. And I'm like, this is me. I'm like, I am Jane Bennett in this book.
I would describe you as more Lydia-ish in real life than Jane Bennett, but you do
Yeah.
have that element.
I was like, wow, she just wants to stay home and do all of her nerdy stuff. That's exactly what I want to do.
we're all a little Jane, I think, a
Yeah.
little
Jane
bit.
Bennett. I know we're all a little Jane Bennett. That's so funny. Yeah, I feel like Emily was very good with that, with all the Doctor Who stuff. Her husband is British, so I feel like I don't know if maybe
He's
that's
not
why
even a
you
Doctor
do that
Who
well.
fan. He's like, I
Who
don't
fan? He's
know.
not.
And I was like, but you're British.
You're asking all these things. Don't
You're
you know
betraying,
everything
you're
British?
betraying your country.
I know. So funny.
Sorry, I squashed you, Harry. I'll let you ask.
No,
No,
please.
also the
You're the
Emma thing,
host.
but also the Emma part, just really quickly, because that was funny, because we got called out. When if somebody, wasn't it like an agent or something, was like, why do we still need more Austen retellings? We have enough Austen retellings. So it's like,
Yes.
Do
we
we?
just,
Do we though?
yeah. And that chapter was like later, that remember, like we had to add that, we were writing and we added that chapter,
Oh,
and
that's
we're
right.
like, let's call it out. Let's let her watch one. And
Yeah.
it's like, we don't need to watch another retelling. My God, like how many of these can we do? And so we're like,
Yes.
yeah.
We're like,
Well,
yes, we like to
well,
lean into
yeah,
critic.
publishers,
I love
we're
that.
here to tell you we all want the retellings and we want
Yes.
as many as we can
Yes.
get. Thank you.
We
Going.
do.
I love
Yes.
that moment
Over and
because when she's like, oh, they're about to touch hands, I was like, that's exactly what it's like. Where like all these tiny moments feel so huge when you're watching or like encountering these adaptations. And that's what, I was like, yes, I love that she loves this.
Do you
Careful
guys have
not
a
to-
favorite adaptation? Like if you had to pick a favorite Austen adaptation, is there a film or a TV series or a book that you'd recommend to our watchers?
Yeah. I'll say mine. Or do you want to say
Yeah.
yours? I'll say
No,
mine.
go.
Mine is the 6-part miniseries, the BBC Pride and Prejudice. That's I yes, I watched it a lot this summer, a lot. So I feel like that is, I made my husband, he'd never seen it. And I'm like,
We
okay,
has to.
you need to sit, you have to sit. And he's like, and he's like, there's a lot. He was like, there's a lot of, he said, he's like, there's a lot of the, when you're at the church, I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Mr. Collins.
He was like,
Mr. Collins.
he's like, there's a lot of Mr. Collins. He was like, there's another episode about Mr. Collins. He was like, Mr. Collins in this. So anyway,
he's the
that is my
threat.
favorite.
We have to see him.
I know. It's like, so that is my favorite.
Okay.
Is like my happy
So,
place.
If you haven't seen it, people, 1995 BBC adaptation, it's amazing. And what about you, Emily?
I am all over the place, I think, because I just watched The Sense and Sensibility, because for some reason, my kids were watching Harry Potter, and I was like, Alan Rickman, and I was like, I have to watch, got to do it. And I
know.
did.
It's so good.
It's so good. The
So I think
script is so good.
So good. Yeah. But I think it's just, we were very lucky because Audrey and I had that period in the 90s where there were so many Jane Austens, and it was such a pivotal, time. It was just like becoming like, going through getting older and deciding, I think you imprint on your favorite type of romance at about 13 or 14 years old. And I imprinted heavily on, there was Colin Firth and there was Paul Rudd from Clueless. And I think it's just like those kind of characters kind of like, that's it. That's right there. That's who I love. But yeah. Although Audrey loves.
What about you guys? Yes.
You like, no, you love, who's your favorite from Emma? That I am like, I hate him.
Oh yes, I do. My second is the Gwyneth Paltrow.
Wow.
That's my favorite. I will watch that quickly. Like, oh, it's on in the background. Yes, we're watching the whole thing. But my Frank Churchill, I love Ewan McGregor as Frank Churchill, and Emily and I will get into big debates because I love Frank Churchill. I'm like, he's a misunderstood character. She's like,
misunderstood apparently.
This is why we dated the assholes in our 20s. We were supposed to learn the lesson of why identifying like is not.
I wonder what these books would have looked like if you'd written them like 15 years ago.
I know, wouldn't that
Before
be
you guys would have done
interesting?
it.
If you could
Very,
every 10
yeah.
years write your version of it, it
Yeah.
would be so interesting which hero you'd pick.
And we
So
can
Frank Churchill
Mhm.
for Audrey. Is there a hero?
Back then, I
Like,
mean, yeah.
Emily, would you pick like Wentworth or Darcy, or if you had to pick a hero?
I love Wentworth.
Me
I think
too.
Wentworth is like my favorite. I mean, there is just, I
Mhm.
also like second chance romance. I love that. I
Yeah,
love,
me too.
like, so I
Have you
think that
guys
helps.
seen the British what I can't remember what year, 90 something with Amanda Root, the Persuasion movie?
That's 90, I think it was 95. I think there's a
95?
Yeah.
trifecta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
That's
was I
the best
love that.
Persuasion.
A
Yeah,
That's the
great
best
year for
absolutely.
persuasion.
Austen.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
the best one. Mhm.
95 was Austen's best year.
Austen.
That's right.
Yeah, that was her
She didn't
year.
know. She
She's
has no
like
idea.
late
No,
bloomer.
I'm gonna gut.
She
Get a
knows.
lot of press.
Yeah. Well, can I just say thank you so much for joining us? And for everyone who's listening or watching, Elizabeth of East Hampton and Emma of 83rd Street are out now, but also we are hanging on for Anne of Avenue A, which will be out in October. So thank you so much for giving us these books, and thanks for talking to us. We've had so much fun.
So much fun. Thank you guys.
Can I say one more quick little thing? Emily also has a book coming out that is
Ooh,
this summer. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know this. Yes.
come on, Emily.
So
What
it's
is
called
it?
How Freaking Romantic, and it's so good. So it's amazing. So
So
yeah,
what month
I
is
feel
it
like
out?
Emily, you just have to say a little pitch about it. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean it's just the, two people who
New York.
yeah, like do not want to fall in love in New York. It's a divorce attorney and a girl whose best friends are getting divorced, and so she storms to the office of one of the divorce attorneys to tell him off, and it just
Oh,
That sounds
awesome.
so
It goes from
fun.
there. It's really
All right.
fun.
So
It's
what
really
month?
it's
fun.
an
And it's
angry female is a lead. I was like, I need
Oh,
someone who's
wait, do you
really
have
angry.
it? Do you have the cover, Emily? Do you have the cover? Do you have the cover
It's not.
nearby?
We'll share it
I'm
on our
not at
socials,
all
everyone.
organized.
We'll
Okay.
share some
I
links
was
to
like,
buy it.
I'm in a different room. I would have it, but
So
it's
it's
very
out
fun
in
and
Northern
yeah.
Summer. So what month, Northern
Yes.
Summer? June,
Yes,
July,
July, I think, is
July?
coming out.
July
Okay.
1st it's coming out. It's
Okay.
July
Well,
1st.
see,
I
you
know.
need her as your PR agent,
I
Emily.
was like,
Yeah,
this
this
is
is
She's
July
amazing.
really good
1st.
at it.
We'll
I mean, I don't know if
post-
it's different in Australia, but it's July 1st, and it's wonderful. It's really, really,
Oh,
really
Okay,
thanks,
good.
Audrey.
we will post and we
My
will
favorite
repost
writer,
in
Emily
July.
Harding. Yeah.
Emily Harding.
Yeah.
How Freaking
Anyway,
Romantic.
thank you, Audrey
Love.
Bellezza and Emily Harding, and everyone go read these Austen adaptations. They're so much fun.
Oh, thank you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
Thanks for
Thank
talking to
you.
us. You guys are amazing. We
I could
love
talk to you guys
Oh,
for
thanks
hours.
for
That was so much
reading.
fun.
I know. Thank you for
Thank you.
caring.
Oh, stop. Well, that was fun.
That was an amazing first interview for the pod, I think. Like, could you ask two
Yeah.
nicer people?
Literally.
That was really fun. I love that they had such fun stories for every single one of our questions. It was really good.
I know.
That
I
was
actually was thinking of too
interesting.
many questions. I was writing more down as we went. We didn't get to them.
I know. I was trying to type really like casually, like
Casual typing below
on
the
my
screen.
Word document, like trying not to look like I was doing that. And then I got caught, and then they asked me about my question, and I was like, oh, I'll
Oh,
stop doing
what
that.
question was I saying again?
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. And
Well,
then
you
I
know-
just started jumping as well. And I was like, fuck. And then I went, oh, we always jump. And then we all just started jumping around. And then they started jumping. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is all going smoothly.
Yeah, we always like, oh, that makes me think of this. That makes me think of this, which is, I mean, I think it's a sign of a good interview.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
true.
really, really hoping they send the sour cherry muffin recipe.
Oh my
and
gosh.
email them
No.
about that immediately because I
I-
think we need to cook that.
Can't wait for us to watch Millie bake those.
I know, because if we baked them, they would not be the best muffins in the world. I really just don't have a cardiologist's love of muffins. I have
No,
to-
yeah, exactly.
Or we do a MasterChef style and have like a versus, same recipe.
Great British Bake Off. Yeah, that's right. It's the Great Amy Ann Bake Off, and we all have to put our little thing forward, and Millie can judge us.
Just
technical
completely
challenge.
messing up Amy's
This one
kitchen
is
as
missing cherries.
well.
What is this? Sorry, I was
No
busy
flour.
reading.
Oh my gosh.
That was so much fun.
That was so
Like,
much fun.
the book, it makes sense that the books are good as well because
Yeah.
like they're
Yeah.
really fun people, and you can now I have like even more of an
Their
appreciation for them.
voices in your head. Now I want to go through and go, can I pick who wrote which bit?
Yes,
Yeah.
I realized we got so caught up in fun conversation that I was like, there's so many other questions that
I
I
know
wanted
we
to
didn't
ask.
ask about collaboration much at all, which I'm
Right?
curious
Because
about.
just felt
Yeah,
like
so
friends
much.
chatting.
Might
I
have to
know,
talk
we'll
to
have
them
to talk
again.
to them again.
Oh no, yeah.
Yes. What always astonishes me too is that you have this idea of writers as these very introverted shy people, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, you're so friendly. But maybe it's because we're let out of our cage for an hour and we're like, oh, talk to people quickly. Now I'm going back in my cage.
Now I'm going back to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, from your perspective, Amy, when you get interviewed, do you find that it's a bit like, I mean, you've done so many of them. So what's it like now when you do it? Are you just like, oh, I know everything. Like I know what to say. I know
I
kind
think
of what's going to be thrown at me.
if you do, like, if you've got a release, you've kind of been asked the same questions a lot. So you've
Yeah.
got your answers. The trick is like I think, to find a genuine response and not just give a pat answer. I've chaired a lot of festival panels,
Yeah.
and I really hate it as a chair when someone's giving me a rote response, because it's very hard to grab hold of it and turn it into a conversation. So what I
Yeah.
loved about Audrey and Emily was that it was a genuine conversation. Like, they were listening and responding, and they weren't just giving us the script of here's what I say about this book. They were actually engaging with the questions,
It's
which I
also so
love.
obvious that they're best friends.
I know.
The way that they were talking like to each other, and they'll be like, "No, come on, your part. You do
Tell
this
your
part of the story
story.
better." I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! Like, it's so
Can we
easy
be
to talk to
friends?
people."
I'd like
Yeah,
to hang out.
I was like, "You guys are fun as well."
Uh, I'm
You're
really
as
Oh,
much
looking
fun as
forward to
us.
reading Emily's book. That the very brief pitch sounds so fun.
Yeah, I
oh, it's-
feel like we should put up some links to that, because I'd like to read that as well. So
yes,
maybe
I
we
feel,
should do that over the American summer, the Australian winter is have a read of Emily's new book.
and it's a great time for reading here. Like, there's
Right now it
nothing,
is.
yeah,
What
well,
do
yeah,
you mean
literally.
winter?
But like the intense heat and the intense cold is always when when I can smash out 8 books. I'm
Yeah.
like June to July. Oh, that's incredible.
I wish
I'm
I
gonna
had the
have to get that.
time. I
Yeah.
miss that, like having time to read, just read and read and read.
Well, it's
I've
just a
got a
job.
chair in my room here, sits by the window, and I stare at it every day. I'm like, oh, maybe in the afternoon I can sit down and just read. And then my day goes, you're laughing because you know what my workload looks like. And it's just like, oh no, that's
I
not
can
This
just,
is
happening.
I'm just picturing you there with the baseball cap on, writing,
Oh, that's
staring at the
coming.
chair, going,
Yeah.
oh.
Just for the people watching along at home, when I'm on deadline, I end up in a baseball cap because I don't do my hair, and I look like a freak. I just
And we
feel
get a
like,
good pre-warning as well. We always get a
yes, like, oh, we're
pre-warning if
at
we're
this
doing
stage
meetings.
of the year,
Yeah.
guys.
Amy will say, I will be in a baseball
It's
cap.
baseball
You go,
season,
oh,
everyone.
okay.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. That was a really great first interview, and I don't know how we top that, but we will
Yeah,
try
literally.
next month to top it with our next interview. And
The
we've got
sun continues to shine on Amy and.
uh, literally, because today it is 43/110 degrees.
Yeah,
So it is
oh
exactly.
my
not
god.
just shining, it is crisping us.
We
And
should
if
say, yeah, we should say the smoke and the fires will be
and
shining on Amy.
if you can hear air conditioners or fans on this audio
Yeah.
recording, no, you didn't.
No.
Yeah.
Well, you should be like in sympathy, otherwise we'd
Yeah.
be dripping wet.
Oh,
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We are not going to announce yet who we've got, but by the time this comes out, you will know who's on next month, hopefully. But we've
for
got
April.
some really exciting guests for April and for May. And yeah, if you've got any recs, if there's anyone you'd like us to interview, or any authors or books that you'd love us to cover, we'll take recs. So reach out to us on @AmyAnn Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Because what authors are going to say no to these faces? Hey? Come on.
All right. Big love. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.